you mentioned that podcast, and it's actually bombed, Michelle Obama's new podcast.
Michelle Obama's podcast has been a big fail.
The televised event unfolded with an intensity that few could have anticipated, marking a turning point in the way political discourse can intersect with deeply personal matters. A renowned figure known for her poise, intelligence, and years of public service stepped into the national spotlight and delivered a message that resonated with both admiration and shock. With a measured yet firm tone, she laid bare a critique of the private life of a man who had just ascended to the nation's highest office, and in doing so, she brought to the forefront issues that had long been relegated to whispers behind closed doors. The broadcast was not merely a discussion of policy or governance, it was a passionate examination of character, ethics, and the personal commitments that underpin public trust. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. Her delivery was both graceful and unyielding, capturing the attention of millions across the country. There was an undeniable air of gravitas as she addressed subjects that many had thought were beyond the pale of political commentary. The focus of her discourse was not on the intricacies of political strategy or economic policy, but on the moral foundations that many believe are essential for any leader. Her words cast a long shadow over the personal reputation of the newly elected president and prompted a re-examination of the ideals of fidelity and trust that are expected in the most intimate of relationships. In doing so, she questioned the authenticity of a marital bond that had been publicly celebrated, yet was now subject to scrutiny under the harsh light of moral accountability. Her remarks were delivered in a manner that left no room for ambiguity. With each carefully chosen phrase, she dissected the public persona from the private realities, suggesting that the values a leader espouses must be lived out in all aspects of life. The discussion turned to the significance of marital commitment and the notion that a public figure's personal conduct should reflect the high standards expected of someone in a position of power. The language used was direct and unapologetic, an unequivocal statement that personal integrity is not a compartmentalized virtue, but a holistic one. By openly challenging the veracity of the president's character, she tapped into a collective sentiment that has long craved accountability from those who wield influence over national destiny. The moment was emblematic of a broader cultural shift where the boundaries between the public and private realms of political figures have grown increasingly porous. In an age where every facet of a leader's life is subject to public examination, her intervention was a stark reminder that personal behavior and political leadership are inextricably linked. This event underscored the idea that the integrity of a leader is measured not only by policies and decisions, but also by the consistency of their personal actions. It was a call to re-establish the standard that those who lead must be paragons of both professional competence and personal honor. And it brought into question the suitability of an individual whose private conduct appeared to diverge from these ideals. The implications of her remarks are manifold and extend far beyond the immediate realm of marital fidelity. They challenge the very notion of political decency and the unwritten social contract between a leader and the people they serve. The broadcast ignited a conversation about the expectations placed on those who hold power and the consequences of failing to adhere to those expectations. It questioned whether the personal indiscretions of a leader could undermine public confidence in their ability to govern. The idea that a personal failing could be indicative of broader issues of character and judgment was a theme that resonated deeply, prompting many to reconsider the qualities that are truly essential in a public servant. Her intervention was laden with implications for the political landscape as well. The rhetoric employed served as a clarion call to those who believe that personal accountability is paramount in the realm of public service. By holding the president to a higher moral standard, she implicitly argued that the personal and the political are not separate spheres, but interconnected dimensions of leadership. This perspective has the potential to reshape political expectations, pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior and redefining the criteria by which leaders are judged. The notion that the private failings of a leader could have profound public consequences is one that may well influence the future conduct of political figures. compelling them to be more circumspect about the intersections between their personal and professional lives. Moreover, the event served as a potent reminder of the power of television as a medium for shaping public discourse. In an era characterized by rapid information exchange and an ever-growing media landscape, the televised moment took on a life of its own. It was a demonstration of how a single, carefully constructed message could alter the narrative and redefine the boundaries of political conversation. The broadcast captivated an audience that was not only attuned to the nuances of political debate, but also deeply invested in the moral dimensions of leadership. The image of a respected public figure challenging the integrity of the nation's leader added a layer of drama that transcended conventional political commentary, transforming the moment into a symbol of resistance against perceived moral decay. The analysis of the event reveals an intricate interplay between personal ethics and public duty. At its core, the message was a critique of the disconnect between the image projected to the public and the private realities that often remain hidden. It suggested that the trust placed in a leader is predicated on a belief that they embody the values they advocate. When that trust is undermined by evidence of personal indiscretions, it calls into question the very legitimacy of their authority. The critique was not an isolated attack on an individual, but a broader commentary on the standards that are expected of those who aspire to hold public office. In this light, the event becomes a case study in the dynamics of public trust and the fragile nature of political legitimacy. There was also a strong undercurrent of social commentary woven into the narrative of the broadcast. The discussion touched on themes of loyalty, betrayal, and the erosion of traditional values, themes that have long been the subject of national debate. The personal revelations that were implied by her words served as a mirror reflecting broader societal concerns about the integrity of those in power. This was not merely a dispute between individuals, it was a reflection of the tension between modern political realities and long-standing ideals about the sanctity of personal commitment. The event challenged the notion that a leader's personal life is a private matter, arguing instead that the integrity of a public figure is measured by the consistency between their public declarations and private behavior. The manner in which the comments were delivered highlighted a strategic use of rhetoric that was both persuasive and stirring. The language was chosen with the precision of a seasoned orator, designed to evoke a strong emotional response from the audience. There was a sense of urgency in her words, as though the stakes extended far beyond the immediate circle of political elites. The implication was clear, that the moral fabric of the nation is at risk when those entrusted with its care are perceived to fall short of the highest standards of personal conduct. The broadcast was a call to action, an invitation for citizens to demand greater accountability from their leaders and to reconsider the qualities that are essential for effective governance. In examining the broader implications, one cannot ignore the symbolic significance of the public platform used for this revelation. The television set became a stage for a performance that transcended the ordinary boundaries of political debate. It was a moment in which the personal was laid bare for all to see, inviting viewers to engage in a deeper reflection on the nature of leadership and the responsibilities that come with it. The medium of television, with its capacity to reach a diverse and extensive audience, amplified the impact of the message, ensuring that the themes of integrity and accountability would reverberate far beyond the confines of the broadcast. This event was a stark reminder of the power that media holds in shaping public opinion and in redefining the standards of political discourse. At the heart of the broadcast was an appeal to values that many hold dear: honesty, trust, and the sanctity of personal commitment. The message was clear: the personal transgressions of a leader are not merely a private matter, but a public concern that can have far-reaching implications for the health of a democratic society. The call for transparency and authenticity in the personal lives of public figures was an assertion that leaders must be models of the very virtues they expect their constituents to uphold. In challenging the president's personal behavior, the speaker was also challenging a broader cultural narrative that has, at times, allowed personal shortcomings to be overlooked in favor of political expediency. The event underscored the belief that true leadership is inseparable from moral character, and that the erosion of ethical standards in personal relationships can signal deeper systemic issues. There was an unmistakable element of defiance in the tone of the broadcast, a defiance that spoke to a deep-seated frustration with the state of political affairs. The remarks were delivered with an assurance that left little doubt about the speaker's conviction, and that conviction resonated with an audience that had grown weary of superficial politics and empty rhetoric. The critique was an embodiment of a broader desire for leaders who not only talk about values, but who also live by them in every aspect of their lives. It was a reminder that political power is a sacred trust, one that demands the highest level of personal responsibility and integrity. The speaker's unyielding stance was a call for a return to a more principled approach to leadership, one in which personal behavior is seen as a reflection of one's ability to serve the public good. The confrontation represented by the televised remarks is a reflection of a broader cultural and political moment in which the lines between personal ethics and public duty are increasingly blurred. It raises profound questions about the nature of trust and the expectations that society places on its leaders. The argument put forth was not merely that a personal failing is a private matter, but that the very essence of political legitimacy is compromised when a leader fails to adhere to the ethical standards they profess. This perspective challenges a long-standing tradition of separating personal life from public responsibilities, asserting instead that the two are inextricably linked. The implications of this viewpoint are significant, suggesting that future political figures may be held to an even more rigorous standard of personal conduct. The event also invites reflection on the historical evolution of political communication. In past eras, the private lives of political figures were often shrouded in a veil of discretion, and personal matters were considered off-limits to public debate. However, the modern landscape is markedly different, with media and public scrutiny penetrating every facet of a leader's life. The broadcast served as a poignant reminder of this transformation, highlighting the ways in which personal revelations can shape the public narrative. It challenged the notion that a leader's personal life should be immune from criticism, arguing instead that personal integrity is a cornerstone of effective leadership and a fundamental expectation of those who hold power. Furthermore, the televised moment resonated on a deeply emotional level, tapping into the collective consciousness of a nation grappling with questions of identity, loyalty, and the meaning of public service. The critique was not delivered in a vacuum. It was the product of decades of public engagement with issues of morality and accountability in leadership. The words spoken on that day carried the weight of historical precedents and served as a powerful reminder of the enduring importance of personal virtue. By directly challenging the personal integrity of a figure whose public persona had been meticulously crafted, the speaker set the stage for a broader re-examination of what it means to lead with honor and conviction. The implications of this event extend into the realms of political strategy and public relations, offering a glimpse into the evolving dynamics of modern governance. The broadcast underscored the idea that personal narratives are an essential component of political legitimacy and that the public's trust is contingent upon the alignment of one's actions with the values they espouse. It was a bold assertion that the personal conduct of those in power is subject to the same rigorous scrutiny as their professional decisions, a sentiment that challenges the long-standing divide between the two. This perspective is likely to influence not only public opinion, but also the way in which political campaigns are conducted in the future, as personal integrity becomes an increasingly central criterion for evaluating leadership. The event was also a moment of reckoning for the culture of celebrity and political theater that has come to define modern public life. The blending of personal drama with political messaging created a narrative that was as compelling as it was controversial, a narrative that invited viewers to reconsider the nature of political spectacle. The broadcast was emblematic of a time when the personal failings of public figures are no longer hidden from view, but are instead thrust into the spotlight as indicators of broader societal trends. It was a demonstration of how the personal can become political and how individual actions can serve as a barometer for the health of a democratic society. In the midst of this turbulent landscape, the televised remarks emerged as a beacon of moral clarity, challenging the audience to hold their leaders to a higher standard. The critique was not an isolated attack on an individual, but a broader commentary on the state of public discourse and the values that underpin it. It was a reminder that leadership is not solely defined by policy decisions or political maneuvering, but by the personal integrity that serves as the foundation of trust between a leader and the people they serve. The message was clear. The private failings of a public figure are not matters to be swept under the rug, but issues that demand honest scrutiny and accountability. As the televised moment reverberated across the nation, it sparked an internal dialogue about the responsibilities of those who hold power and the standards by which they are measured. The discussion centered on the idea that a leader's personal life is inextricably linked to their ability to govern effectively, and that the erosion of personal integrity can have profound implications for the broader political system. It was a powerful reminder that public trust is built on a foundation of honesty, consistency, and ethical behavior, a foundation that can be shaken when private actions stand in stark contrast to public declarations. In reflecting on the broader implications, one can see that the event serves as a catalyst for a renewed conversation about the relationship between personal conduct and public service. It challenges deeply ingrained assumptions about the separation of personal and political life and calls for a more integrated approach to evaluating the character of those in positions of power. The critique delivered on that day was not merely an attack on individual behavior. It was a clarion call for a reimagining of the standards of leadership, one that demands accountability not just in matters of policy, but in the everyday choices that define who a person truly is. The discourse that emerged from the televised event carries with it a sense of urgency, as if the very fabric of political integrity were at stake. It forces an examination of the delicate balance between public image and private behavior, and it underscores the idea that true leadership is rooted in authenticity. The event has left an indelible mark on the national conversation, inviting citizens to scrutinize not only the actions of their leaders, but the values that those actions represent. It is a moment that compels a reassessment of what it means to lead in a society where every personal decision can have profound public consequences. The broadcast stands as a powerful reminder that leadership is as much about personal character as it is about political acumen. The words spoken on that day were not simply a personal vendetta or an isolated critique. They were a call for a deeper, more honest engagement with the ethical dimensions of public service. In challenging the personal integrity of a leader who had just stepped into office, the message was one of unwavering commitment to the idea that the personal and the political are inextricably linked, and that the standards of one cannot be compromised without affecting the other. This realization, conveyed with both passion and precision, has the potential to reshape the contours of political discourse for years to come. The confrontation on live television ushered in an era of uncharted political candor, a moment that can be examined through the lens of historical evolution, in the scrutiny of personal lives. Centuries ago, the private affairs of leaders were shrouded in secrecy, preserved as intimacies too sacred for public deliberation. Royal courts and statesmen guarded personal failings behind a veneer of decorum, with the public discourse focused solely on matters of statecraft and diplomacy. Over time, however, the rigid boundaries between the public and the private began to crumble. The modern political climate now prizes transparency to an extent that once would have been considered scandalous or unseemly. This transformation can be understood as a reaction to a burgeoning culture of accountability in which the personal decisions of those in power are seen as integral to their public persona. In a society that increasingly values authenticity over artifice, personal shortcomings have evolved into a symbol of the disconnect between proclaimed values and lived reality. At the same time, this paradigm shift is emblematic of a broader cultural metamorphosis where traditional ideals of honor and respectability have been redefined. The contemporary narrative embraces a more nuanced view of personal morality, where the intimate details of a leader's life are not hidden from public inquiry, but instead serve as a measure of their overall integrity. In this context, the live confrontation represents not only a moment of individual censure, but also a repudiation of a political tradition that once allowed leaders to remain aloof from the consequences of their private actions. This historical recontextualization invites observers to reflect on the ways in which cultural norms have morphed in tandem with advances in communication technologies and the democratization of information. The media environment that facilitated this exchange is itself a product of rapid technological and societal evolution. The relentless pace of modern information dissemination has altered the very fabric of political accountability. Where once the evening newspaper or carefully edited radio broadcast held sway, today a single televised moment can ripple across social networks and forums with astonishing speed. In this era, every nuance of a leader's personal conduct is subjected to instantaneous analysis and critique. The event in question underscored the potency of visual media, which possesses the ability to capture fleeting expressions and tone in a manner that the written word cannot. This shift has not only redefined the dynamics of political engagement, but has also rendered the private actions of public figures as fodder for continuous public debate. The influence of digital technology in amplifying personal narratives means that the personal conduct of a leader is inextricably linked to their public image, with consequences that extend far beyond the confines of any one broadcast. As the public grapples with these rapid changes, the societal understanding of marital fidelity has undergone its own transformation. The institution of marriage, long regarded as a private and sacred covenant, is now interwoven with the fabric of public life in ways that defy traditional boundaries. In recent decades, the cultural emphasis on transparency and accountability has extended to the most intimate aspects of a person's life, prompting a reassessment of the values that underpin committed relationships. The televised confrontation challenged the long-held notion that a marriage should remain an untouchable realm of privacy, asserting instead that the choices made within that domain can have far-reaching implications for public trust. This evolving perspective suggests that the ethical framework governing personal relationships is now seen as an extension of the moral responsibilities that accompany public office. Delving further into the realm of ethical philosophy, the incident raises profound questions about the nature of leadership and the standards to which public figures should be held. Traditional theories of governance often compartmentalized a leader's private life as irrelevant to their public function. Yet, modern ethical thought increasingly contends that the personal is indeed political, that a leader's personal decisions can reveal much about their capacity for empathy, judgment, and ethical reasoning. This convergence of personal and public ethics has inspired new models of accountability that demand consistency between a leader's private conduct and their public declarations. The implications are vast, suggesting that any discrepancy between these spheres may be indicative of deeper flaws in character. In this light, the confrontation becomes a case study in the practical application of virtue ethics, where the measure of a leader's worth is determined not merely by their policy achievements, but by the totality of their personal and professional conduct. Within the sphere of political strategy, the event has prompted a reassessment of how candidates craft and manage their public images. For decades, political operatives have meticulously constructed narratives that shield personal imperfections from the public eye. The traditional approach involved a careful balancing act between projecting strength and preserving an aura of invulnerability. However, the unfiltered nature of modern broadcast media has rendered such strategies increasingly obsolete. In a world where every nuance of personal behavior is subject to immediate and relentless scrutiny, the ability to compartmentalize one's private life from public expectations is no longer tenable. The televised remarks have thus spurred a transformation in campaign strategy, compelling political aspirants to adopt a more holistic approach to image management, one that embraces vulnerability as well as strength. This evolution in candidate presentation signifies a shift toward a political culture where authenticity is prized above all, and where any dissonance between public pronouncements and private behavior is likely to be exposed and exploited by critics. On an international stage, the dynamics of personal integrity and political accountability are being reimagined in ways that challenge long-standing norms. Many democracies around the world have begun to witness a convergence of private and public scrutiny that mirrors the trends observed in this instance. Comparative analyses reveal that the personal lives of leaders in various nations are increasingly becoming a subject of public debate, as societies demand higher levels of transparency and ethical consistency from their elected officials. This global trend is not confined to any single political system. Rather, it is a reflection of a broader ideological shift toward greater openness in governance. In many parts of the world, leaders who were once insulated by the traditions of political discretion are now vulnerable to the same standards of personal accountability that have emerged in the modern era. The international resonance of this event highlights the universality of the principles at stake, underscoring the idea that leadership in the 21st century demands an integration of personal integrity and public service that transcends cultural and national boundaries. The interplay between celebrity culture and political narrative is another aspect that merits careful consideration. In recent years, the boundaries between entertainment and politics have grown increasingly porous. The media's fascination with the personal lives of public figures has turned political leaders into household names whose every move is dissected and debated. This blending of celebrity and political accountability has given rise to a new form of political theater, one in which dramatic revelations are staged as much for their emotional impact as for their substantive political content. The confrontation under discussion exemplifies this trend, as it fused the gravitas of political critique with the raw emotional intensity of personal disclosure. This fusion has profound implications for the nature of political engagement, as it challenges the public to navigate a complex terrain where personal drama and public policy are inextricably linked. The result is a form of political discourse that is as much about narrative and spectacle as it is about governance, prompting scholars to reevaluate the role of media in shaping contemporary political identities. The psychological dimensions of this event offer another rich vein of inquiry. Human cognition is deeply influenced by narratives that resonate on an emotional level, and the public's response to personal revelations is often filtered through a lens of empathy, cognitive dissonance, and moral judgment. The exposure of private transgressions can trigger a reevaluation of one's perceptions of trust and reliability, as well as a reassessment of the qualities that constitute effective leadership. Psychological studies have shown that when individuals are confronted with evidence of incongruity between a leader's professed values and their private behavior, the ensuing dissonance can lead to significant shifts in attitudes and beliefs. This phenomenon is particularly relevant in an age where information is abundant and readily available, enabling citizens to form opinions based on a mosaic of personal and professional observations. The cognitive impact of such revelations is profound, as it forces the public to reconcile the idealized image of leadership with the often messy reality of human fallibility. In the realm of political theory, the incident provides a fertile ground for exploring the concept of legitimacy. Traditional theories of political legitimacy have often centered on the efficacy of governance and the ability of leaders to deliver results. However, modern interpretations increasingly incorporate the dimension of moral authority, arguing that a leader's personal virtues are integral to their claim to power. This reconceptualization challenges conventional wisdom by asserting that legitimacy is not solely a function of performance, but also of ethical comportment. When a leader's private behavior is called into question, it invites a broader discussion about the sources of political authority and the moral obligations that underpin public service. This theoretical framework has the potential to reshape the criteria by which leaders are evaluated, emphasizing the need for a harmonious integration of ethical integrity with effective governance. The ramifications of this televised confrontation also extend into the academic study of gender and power. In a political landscape that has historically been dominated by rigid gender roles and expectations, the public scrutiny of personal relationships can serve as a catalyst for reevaluating how masculinity and femininity are constructed within the sphere of leadership. The public dissection of marital fidelity, for instance, has long been used as a yardstick for assessing the moral fiber of male leaders. However, emerging feminist critiques challenge this paradigm by arguing that personal failings should not be disproportionately used to discredit a leader's professional accomplishments. Instead, such analyses call for a more equitable approach that recognizes the complex interplay between personal identity, societal expectations, and political performance. By engaging with these gendered dimensions, scholars and commentators are forced to confront the inherent biases that have long shaped political discourse, paving the way for a more inclusive and nuanced understanding of what constitutes ethical leadership. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, Could you leave your comments below and tell us? What are your thoughts on Michelle Obama's comments about Donald and Melania Trump's marriage? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.